Forward looking. Lay it off. Just Mario sends it in off of Gressel. Made it to Elliott. Oh! Julian comes in. A spectacular finish. Philadelphia. Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And I told you guys last episode, let's go ahead and think about ideas, what we can do for a podcast since Union would be on a 2-week break. I guess technically that was a lie since they had a friendly last weekend against Eintracht Frankfurt. And so I came up with a brilliant idea because tonight's guest, you guys can see it in the show description, joining us, Philadelphia Union play-by-play radio announcer Dave Leno is joining the show with us momentarily. And Dave and I, we had been talking like all year long. And Dave was like, I've been on every other Philadelphia Union podcast, it seems like, but yours. And so I figured what better time than a little bit of a mini break. The Union are riding on a high than to bring Dave Leno into the show while we go ahead and just talk about the season so far. We'll go ahead and talk about a whole bunch of Union news, and we'll go ahead and talk about maybe a little bit of this Toronto preview at the end of the show. We'll see how that goes. But I told you guys last episode, because some of you were like, well, isn't the David Vazquez news newsworthy? And I said, we got to have the guy who broke the deal, the news, before it was officially announced by the club, join us to get his thoughts on it. And so joining us before he heads out to Ireland for a week is José Nuñez. José, thank you for joining pretty much. I mean, it feels like last minute. I know I gave you a couple of days notice and everything, but this is going to be your last podcast appearance for a little bit while you go across the pond and enjoy Ireland.
Yes, it is, Todd. Thank you for having me. As always, always so much fun. Excited to not be the suboptimal part of this whole thing, or I actually will be officially the suboptimal part of this whole thing, because when Dave comes on, that's when this whole thing gets elevated to the next level. So, yeah, it's exciting. We fly out tomorrow out of Newark because there was no reasonably priced flight out of Philadelphia to go to Ireland. So we figured, all right, we'll just drive an extra, 30 minutes and make our way to Newark and fly direct. All the affordable flights out of Philly had a connection in Washington, D.C., Dulles. So we had no desire to check in bags and pray that they get to Ireland after connecting somewhere else. So, yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. And obviously a lot has happened since you and I got behind the microphone together. And a lot's going to happen here with the home stretch of 9 or 8 games?
Yeah, 9 games left, and we'll get into that towards the end of the show. But it does feel like it was just yesterday, and when we were all cold in the wintertime and getting in our pea coats and trying to stay warm because, as you know, José, as our guest knows, Dave Leno, you have an open press box, an open broadcast booth, and you feel that cold air coming off of the Delaware, and you try your best to stay warm. But when the Union have been so successful like they have been this season, it helps you stay a little bit warmer than some of those cold, chilly nights off the Delaware and Chester. But joining us is the Philadelphia Union's play-by-play radio announcer for 97.5 The Fanatic, Dave Leno. Dave, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
Good evening, Todd, José, and everybody. Hopefully I'm coming across loud and clear. It's really a treat to be with you guys and talk first place Union. I'm really excited for tonight, and a lot to be positive about. We're not in League's Cup. Let all those other clubs battle out in that competition, and we're grateful coming off the friendly and gearing up for the Toronto game on the weekend.
Yeah, and like José had alluded to a little bit ago, it's so much Union news, and just when you think it's going to be a slow news week, the Union off from first team duty for 2 weeks, it shows you that the soccer world never sleeps, and there's always moves being made behind the scene, and gives us something to talk about, and really looking forward to it. But before we get into the show, you've done a ton of podcasts and everything, Dave, and so I'm not going to let you do the whole spiel where how you got into calling games for the Union. If people want to find that out, I'm sure they can listen to the million other podcasts that you've done to get the backstory. But I do have to ask you about this, Dave. I thought it was so cool when I saw it in the stadium. It was this picture that a fan had brought in. It's a giant picture of your head. How did this even come about?
So this really, really great guy, Shaggy, is a big fan of our broadcasts, of my game calling, which I'm so appreciative of. I'm really thankful that he and his friends, I think their supporters section, or at least their group is called the Delaware Misfits. And I asked him like how that came about. Basically, I'm calling the game and I'm looking down and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a big fat head of my face, which I don't think anybody wants to see there. And I don't know how he got it in, but somehow security let him bring in that big poster of my head. I guess he took it to a local shop. He told me the whole story. And essentially, he's just a big fan. And I'm, as a announcer for, even though I'm a young guy, I feel like I've been in it for a long time already, ever since my college days, even going back to high school. And when I really wanted to do this around like 8th grade, who thought, looking down and seeing myself there. And so shout out to Shaggy, his friends, for having that. Hopefully it's not giving him nightmares seeing me maybe in his garage off to the side. But I was in Indiana. I went to Indiana and Bloomington, Indiana, in the Big Ten, and they used to have fat heads behind the baskets for foul shots, trying to psych out other teams. So that's what kind of it brought me back to, like, maybe this is like, although I think a lot of these Union players going, what the hell is Leno fathead doing? And even the opposition, like, who the hell's that? Really funny. Got a picture with the group, talked with them. I talked to Shaggy a lot, and very grateful for that. So that's kind of the little behind the scenes story there.
Dave, to be fair, though, as you mentioned, great to see you first and foremost.
Yes,
as you mentioned,
too, man. It's been a long time.
How this thing got through security, frankly, Dave, this is the least.
What's your sources telling you, Jose?
No, it's not even that. What I'm saying is,
come on.
Lately, across the sports world, there's been worse things getting past security, and I don't think we need to talk too much about that. So, like a fat head of yours, it's probably one of the best things that can make it through security nowadays.
Oh man, I mean, I've been playing a lot of tennis at night when my kids go to bed. I'm working out on this whole like workout regiment now. I'm trying to get in shape. I got the U.S. Open broadcasting wise around the Union coming up in a couple weeks. So this is a nice reprieve that I can talk about my big head instead of me grunting for 3 hours when in the middle of the night, when it's just me, my phone, and a friend playing tennis. So I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how security let them bring that in, but that's awesome. Shaggy knew a guy. Maybe he slipped him a 20. Who knows, too? More on that in Jose's report on the other side.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if anybody's going to break, it's going to be Jose. But the first bit of news we'll talk about is probably the biggest bit of news is the Philadelphia Union. Maybe a surprise to many is they go out and acquire striker Ford, former San Diego FC Ford, on loan for 3 months, I believe it was, from FC Nordsjælland over in the Danish Super League. They acquire Milan Iloski from Nordsjælland for a reported $1 million fee. He signs through 2027 with an option for 2028. And like I had said, this came as a surprise, I think, for many fans online, just reading the reactions. I'm sure both of you guys saw the reactions. It's been nothing but positivity for this fan base. And I saw before we recorded the show, there's some fans saying, hopefully Ernst Tanner doesn't sell off any players. But this would tell me that Ernst Tanner, Bradley Cornell, they believe that this team's super special. Milan can be that extra piece to get them over the hump, bring back some silverware. I know Jose and I have talked about it a couple times on the show where Jose would be fine with the U.S. Open Cup. I feel like with the run the Union have been on this year, you might need a little bit more than the U.S. Open Cup. The Supporter Shield's a real possibility. We'll talk about that as they're in first place with 50 points. But this is a huge signing for the club. And I'll go to you first, Dave. I mean, your thoughts when the club officially announced that Milan was joining for the club for the next couple of seasons.
Well, I knew that the Union were looking to add in that transfer window, gearing up for this last run. Just in my conversations with the club, I didn't know who it would be. And all signs point to Iloski is a guy that gives them that another creating and finishing piece in the final third that maybe we need to go on the runs that both of you guys are talking about. And just, looking at, the tape that I've watched on him from the Orange County USL days where he won the Golden Boot in that, I believe, 2022, UCLA days in the past where I called a lot of college soccer. I mean, that's a phenomenal program. I think a lot of people know that, playing 3 seasons there. And then what he did, that record, 4 goals in 12 minutes against Vancouver, watched all those highlights. And here's what I see as just a play-by-play guy, and just take it from the play-by-play seat, not so much the analytical soccer expert mind. So from the play-by-play standpoint, what I see, which would help, is number one, he's a finisher. And I'm not just watching the goals. I'm looking at the types of shots. He can hit with his right. He can hit it on his left. He makes good runs from behind. I'm seeing crosses from other guys, from like the right back, for example, when he played with San Diego. Good crosses, and he makes the run off the back shoulder of their center back. Number two, he can take guys on the dribble. And what was explained to me about Iloski is that he's a little bit of a floater. So he's not somebody, I feel like, in just my little opinion, like a Baribo who lurks around inside the penalty area, or like a Damiani with his hold-up play, right? He can spin and turn like one of the goals, which was terrific, that he had this year. But he's a guy that kind of maybe like Anua that can be on the dribble 15, 20 yards outside and take a guy 1v1, stop on a dime veer and curl a shot in. I like the one-time finishes that I'm seeing on tape from him. I need to see the total picture in the run of play, like what his off-the-ball work is like. And I'm sure coming into the system, as you both know, and a lot of the people watching, that he will be asked to do a lot of defensive responsibilities, just like you see when Baribo, Damiani, Donovan, Ua are out there. I'm going to also say about Iloski is you can also Woody is a big piece, as everybody knows, with the Union, right? And you can use Iloski, I think, as a forward, second forward, or in the Quinn and Indy roles as a 10, as a creative piece as well. So I think somebody writing in your could he be a 10? In my opinion, I think yes. I think he can be to bolster the attack. I think if you look, I'll just end with this, then obviously I'll hit up Jose and his thoughts. The last thing I wanted to say is data-wise, I kind of asked the staff going into the friendly, what did you take from maybe the first third of the season, and what's been different maybe in the last 5 to 10 games? And one of the things that's dipped a little bit is transition goals for the team. Now, obviously, you have to put into context why that is. Several guys were with international duty. Several guys were out due to injury. And then maybe the creating piece just wasn't where it was early on in the season. And we're grateful to be in first place. So I think a guy like Iloski adds to that. I know some people on here may say, hey, maybe another midfielder would have been great. Maybe another center back, maybe a backup left back. But I think this is a real sign, putting the contracts from the other strikers aside, which we know that will be lurking. And I'm confident in my view that I'm hopeful that those guys that are mentioned, like a Baribo, like an Ua, whoever, I'm hopeful will remain here. And I think they will be. I think they genuinely like it here. They will be here for the final stretch of the year. And I think Iloski will add to our depth, which we were sorely missing last year. And I'm hoping he acclimates, the last part, he acclimates to MLS with the Union. I know he played with San Diego, with the Union and its system quickly. Will that translate to him playing against Toronto? We'll see. He's training the team right now. It was announced formally on Tuesday. So I can't wait to see what the kid brings.
Good, Jose.
Honestly, I think Dave nailed it. It was a bit of a surprise to me. I was out, I think, in Colorado when it happened, just doing some of my full-time job. And I sort of checked with people and like, yeah, this is happening. It's like, okay, great. Why? And the one thing that's that Dave touched on, it's just more competition, right? That this let's call it, they call it what, QB room, right? When they talk about American football, right? This striker room right now at the Union is just stacked when you think about who they have, right? With Damiani, Baribo, Ua, Malik out in Union 2, who, as I know it or understand it reportedly, is that his contract come January 1 will turn into a homegrown. So he becomes part of the first team equation as well. So it's lifting up all boats once again and continue to try to improve. Now, I think what's really interesting and something to consider, and I have no information whatsoever, is all of the shifting and moving around over the last 24, 48 hours across the league. What does this mean in the interest for someone like an UA, right? Someone who I think has gone underappreciated by the Union fan base a little bit. He obviously has done very well, Dave. I don't have to tell you that, where he ranks across Union goals, and granted a shorter history than some teams, 15 years, 16 years now. But I'm sure that there's some sort of suitor out there interested for someone like Ua, even though it's a shorter contract length leading till January 1. Maybe there's a club that's interested enough for someone immediately to maybe start a rebuild, and he becomes sort of a transition piece for the next, reigning whatever setup that's coming in. But with Milan, what's really interesting is that as I was asking more about the why and the how, a big piece of the how is that he's domestic. He did not require an international slot, even though it's reported that Ty Baribo got his green card this week or whatever. Whenever it happened, it was officially out that Ty got his green card. Obviously, already traded that spot away to Austin for $50,000 GAM. I think yesterday, Todd, is when it was, or was it today? I can't remember when. But nonetheless, Milan being a domestic player was a huge piece of it. And those per 90 stats, if you type in his name into a database like FBref or SofaScore or Who Scored or whatever, this guy is being compared to a Messi or some of these incredible European stars, and it's sort of okay, but what does it look like when he doesn't have these ridiculous stats? And I believe that the Union all around from scouting that has they've done nothing wrong to make me recently anyways with Jovan and Danley and some other moves that they've made of the last 365 days, maybe a little bit longer. I have no reason to not believe that they see something in him that he could be extremely beneficial to this group. So I'm genuinely intrigued, not even looking beyond January 1 when the calendar or the league year flips over. So really, really interested on the dominoes and what this sort of sets off. But I think the Union are just extremely focused on what it looks like between now and, I guess, MLS final December something at this point, based on this ridiculous playoff schedule that's set forth by the league.
Yeah, and the moves you were talking about the last couple of days, you see Thomas Muller getting announced by Vancouver. That's a huge signing. And my mind, when I saw that, the Union, don't forget, in a couple of weeks or in September, they're going to go out to Vancouver, play Vancouver Whitecaps. And I think of a player like Kai Wagner, how much it's going to mean to him to play against a legend of the game, a German legend, because it's not undermined. I mean, he's won everything there is with Bayern Munich. He's won a World Cup with Germany. This is a kid that came up through the academy in Bayern Munich, and maybe a little bit of a shock for people all around the world that he doesn't finish his career with Bayern Munich. He comes over to MLS, signs with Vancouver, and it reminds me back in 2019, you guys will remember this, when Bastian Schweinsteiger signed with Chicago Fire, and how much I'm sure that probably meant for Kai Wagner to play against another German legend. And now here he goes in a few weeks playing against another one in Thomas Muller. Today it was announced that Son was signed by LFC. I saw they had his press conference, and that's a huge signing for the league. You see the reports out there that are saying that New York Red Bulls want Timo Werner. That would be a big signing for the league. And you're starting to see players, and I know maybe not so much Muller and Son, but I feel like we're starting to see more and more players come over or consider coming over to MLS in their primes. And Timo Werner would be a big player in that. You see Rodrigo De Paul signing with Inter Miami. I almost said Barcelona there a couple of weeks ago. I know that he's over 30 years old, but you're seeing players that I think maybe in the past wouldn't consider MLS, still have something to give in Europe, and they're coming over to MLS, just elevating the talent level here in this country. And so I know I saw in comments when social media, some people are like, well, why can't the Union go out and get one of these big superstar players? And we know it. That's just not how the Union operate. How many times did we hear under former head coach Jim Curtin saying that the team is the superstar? We're not going to rely on individuals. It's the team. We all have to buy in. And the same things with Bradley Cornell. If one person's not pressing, then the whole system falls apart. And so that messaging wasn't lost from Jim Curtin to Bradley Cornell, that we need to be a team first, not individual play. And so I think Milan, to both of your parts, is going to buy into that style of play, that system of play. Like you mentioned, Dave, he's going to be required to do the defensive work. Baribo, Damiani, Ua, they all do it. Saul Olivas, who's made sparse appearances, comes in, does it. A couple weeks ago, makes a big play for Mika Ua to get his second goal in the game where Alejandro Bedoya gets the assist. It's pressure from Saul Olivas. And so Bradley Cornell, we've seen all season long, he values high defensive work rate. And Milan's going to be a player like that. One comment I wanted to pull up was Mike Barrera said, we haven't had 4 strikers of this caliber since Sergio Santos was on that 2022 squad. Cornell has weapons and options up top. And remember, Sergio Santos was traded during 2022 to FC Cincinnati, but the Union did have 4 good strikers in Corey Burke, Santos, Ua, and Carranza. And we'll talk about 2022 here in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's got to excite Bradley Cornell, right, Dave? To have this many weapons off the bench, and we've been seeing Saul Olivas getting chances the last couple of weeks. I know I saw a comment here from Ethan saying, which one of the strikers now starts to lose minutes with Milan here? And we've seen it all season long that Bradley Cornell is not afraid to rotate the squad, and it entices competition. I think competition's good for this team.
And Bradley is the type of coach that I've gotten to know, and he would tell the press this, he would tell fans this. He's not just handing out starts. And I've heard when we picked up the post-game press conferences that you guys are probably, and he's saying, we're not just giving out starts to anybody because they're a name or this or that or what their potential may be, or, it's all based on merit and how they're doing, and obviously what the game plan dictates. And, whether that means, Iloski plays right away, or he sits a couple of games, comes off the bench, maybe 5-10 minutes first, and maybe they go with a Damiani Baribo or, an Ua in this game. I think it's all how I would approach it. It's all about the scout. What is the defense giving you? How can you exploit some of the mistakes maybe the opposition like a TFC might do on Saturday out of the back, and who was the best 2 up top there? And then I'll say back to the 22 year, and I think which was mainly lacking last year is the depth. And we all love Jim. I love Jim. And I would tell you, I think a lot of people knew he had his guy, 65th minute, 70th minute. You knew who was coming into the game. I think maybe different a little bit this year. I think we can all just plainly see is that you don't know who's coming into the game and when that will happen. And they will bring in a Saul Olivas, who in 3 games, you mentioned the pressure leads to one of the goals for Ua, that last goal. So I've been very impressed by Saul, and I'm not surprised that he's been the one. Eddie Davis makes the great ball, which we can get to in the friendly, to Chris Donovan. Marcus Anderson's been flourishing from what I've been told with Union 2, has gotten, a little bit of time with the first team, and they all train with the first team as well. And I think all the different weaponry, the different pieces, someone wrote in the comments, versatility, that's what we need moving forward to make this run, hopefully an Open Cup run, end of the regular season strong. They're not looking ahead. This team operates in 5-game increments is how the staff envisions it. You got what, 9 league games to go, and obviously the Open Cup games, and hopefully we make a run there. 5 on the road in league play, 4 at home. Your 2 biggest tests, obviously, are the Cincinnati road game back-to-back, then the week off, right, and then at Vancouver, and then you end. I think it's always a tough place to play, decision day at Charlotte. I keep telling my friends, family, man, I think that Charlotte game, and this is where, to your point about and your question about the different pieces, who's going to be used, or it's starting or depth pieces. That Charlotte game, it's going to mean something, whether it's 1 versus 2 or for a top 4 seed. I know Miami's got a bunch of games in hand. We're a couple points ahead of several clubs, 1 point ahead of Cincy. I think we're going to learn a lot on decision day, kind of like last year, which wasn't in our favor. And I think it's a good, I don't want to say good problem to have. I hate using that phrase, but yeah, there's going to be guys up top or in that, whether it's at the 9 or at the 10 positions, that aren't going to be happy maybe with how things are going to go for the rest of the way. So whether that's Iloski getting it done, whether that's, Donovan, like he scored in the playoffs, at New England, which maybe nobody expected, kind of a fluke goal a year ago, or it's somebody else make it a run. I think this is fantastic. And I want to end with this. I know I go on tangents here, but I want to say the one thing that I love about this group is, and I say this a lot at kind of our chalk talks that we do at Union Yards before games at home is that how much these guys, just from my view, genuinely like each other. And I'm not saying they didn't last year, they didn't the year before, whatever. But I'm saying to beat the Union, and Todd and José, you both kind of hinted at it, you got to beat the collective here. We've heard a lot of collective defending in years past, but these guys are all together. They're going to win together. They're going to lose together. And I get the feeling that when this team gets punched in the gut, maybe last year you kind of knew, and I hate to compare last year, you're like, oh no, that's it. They're not going to recover. This year, there's been so many instances, even though we've allowed goals, which I think we need to clean up a little bit in the first and second half of stoppage time this year. We also, and I think the coaching staff would say this to everybody, we've also scored late in games. The Toronto game, Marcus Anderson, 98th minute, June 14th against Charlotte, and other examples. I think if teams do score on us, we can counter with a response. A guy like Iloski, the others that we've mentioned, we haven't even mentioned the defenders, or even Lukic and Daly for me is a fantastic story, which is not talked about enough as 2 sixes that are really getting it done and making noise for the Union and for the league. And so happy that the team's at the top right now. And I like to think that they kind of control their own destiny a little bit, with a couple teams have some games in hand. I guess the Miami team does. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm feeling pretty positive going into the final stretch of the year. I really am.
I guess the only thing I'll add, Dave, to what you just shared is this is, and granted, Bradley's head coaching stint in MLS has been short when you think about St. Louis and the year and half. I can't remember how long he was there for the second year. I could be wrong. But this has to be by far, again, the most loaded squad he has worked with as a head coach in MLS for sure. As you even think about that magical 2023 season that was St. Louis's first ever, and actually it's hard to believe it too. And this is sort of like around MLS type of talk, but it's hard to believe that San Diego's having something similar, if not even better. So it's kind of a crazy thing to happen within 2 years of one another. Granted, now it feels like maybe MLS is slowing down in terms of franchises joining, and who knows when the next one will be, but it's just sort of a crazy circumstance that, you have these two teams doing so well, both at the time, their first years ever. But Bradley, he's not working with a Joao Klaus anymore. He's working probably with better prospects than that, to be completely honest. And, who was second best there? Like Sam Adeniran. And we actually saw that experiment here, and that didn't work out too well. So for what it's worth, I think Bradley probably feels really fortunate to have the scouting that he has at hand, the recruitment that he has in hand, etc. It's just working out very well for him here.
Yeah, I agree, Jose. A lot of comments. So let's go ahead and move on to the second point. Is I mentioned it in the intro, David Vazquez being loaned to San Diego FC for $100,000 in GAM, $50,000 in 2025, $50,000 in 2026. San Diego, they have the option to make the loan permanent. Last episode, I talked about CJ Olney being loaned out to Louisville City. And Jose, you and I have talked a lot about this in the show, whether it be David and CJ or Andrew Rick or just other players, where it seems like they have graduated MLS Next Pro. They've needed to go on to a higher level. CJ goes off to the USL Championship. David gets to go and play in MLS. We see him play the other night in Leagues Cup for San Diego, and it looked like he was holding his own. And having the option to buy is the one thing that's a little bit concerning to me, because I do think that David's a highly rated prospect, but you look at all the players that are in front of him and, taking away his game time, I guess the most obvious would be Kevin Sullivan, who, again, maybe isn't getting as much playing time as some in the fan base would have hoped or wanted. But Bradley Cornell says, he's exactly where we want him. He's on the right path and everything. And so you see David Vazquez get loaned out to San Diego. And I mentioned, Jose, you announced this before it was made official by the club. And so your thoughts when you were told about the news for David, and then I'll go to Dave.
Yeah, I had known about it maybe 2 days, 3 days before it was announced, or probably even longer than that. But it's to me, I think the most important piece of this is to clarify, maybe educate the fan base. There's always interest in Union players. There really is. Even right now, I know that there's interest on players. And of course, the Union are holding out, holding strong, etc. There's interest every single day. Whether that formalizes into an offer is a different situation altogether. But I think what really surprises me and maybe feels like turning of the page in a way is letting some of these blue chip prospects go and venture out, right? And try to evolve and grow. And David's one of them. Now, the purchase option, as I understand it, is more than likely going to happen, almost like a secret handshake type of thing that, it's just going to be exercised. Who knows? That could change. But obviously last night, his game against Mazatlan in Leagues Cup did not help his chances of coming back to the Union, considering how well he played, putting in some Jack McGlynn-like balls with his left foot, as well as, showing some grittiness, some skill, some chippiness, almost scoring actually as well. So to me, it's he's not going to play more than Kevin Sullivan in the middle. That just doesn't. I just don't see that's the place. And the time that he started, if I recall, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, since you have a better memory than I do for a lot of these things. When he started, it was U.S. Open Cup, and I can't remember if it was against Pittsburgh or Indy 11, but he was playing as a left back on the evening too. Yeah. So it was like completely out of position, trying something new. So it's really. This is good for him. And I think the human piece that gets lost is he's now only an hour away from home. Family can come and watch him. Family can come and be with him. He can be in a same time zone, and how much of a difference that makes. I know that firsthand from, traveling as much as I do, and obviously completely different industry. That makes a huge difference. So I think this is all around a win-win. Maybe the player feels more comfortable. He's obviously playing well so far. His debut appearance against Tigres, maybe a little bit of a high bar against a team that finished 4th and 6th, or certainly top 8 in Liga MX, both Apertura and Clausura last year. And last night, maybe more of a Toronto-like team, right? Bottom of the barrel for Liga MX, and certainly hung in there. But the one comment I'll finish with before I turn it over to Dave for his thoughts is that after talking to some San Diego folks about David and what he brings, oddly enough, that the one comment they made was they got to get the Philly out of him. He has to stop running around like a madman. He needs to be more static and tactically put than just be chasing the ball and handing off pressure to someone else. He just needs to be put and be more tactically set up than again running around like a madman. So it sounds like it's a match made in heaven. It feels like Mikey Varas and the folks in San Diego are collecting these U20 internationals, like they're, I joked about it with you guys, but like Infinity Stones or something. Like he's just collecting all of these blue chip prospects of the U20 World Cup. So I'm happy for David. And last night recording his first MLS. What do you consider that? I guess first ever Leagues Cup assist, but with an MLS team. So like professional, assist is wonderful. So Dave, I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, etc. about the move. And you've been around this team long enough to know and see that it's not an easy thing for the Union to let go of some of these young, high prospects and let them try their luck somewhere else.
But look, you see this across all sports, even with the Phillies, trading multiple prospects as recent as, this go around to get the closer, right, Duran. With Vazquez, spoken to him several times. I've watched several of his games, not every U2 game, not every academy game, of course. But I think that for him, it's just a better opportunity to get more playing time somewhere else to flourish. And that probably wasn't going to happen. And that's probably a simple answer that I think a lot of people would say, oh, Dave, what are you saying? Of course, he's not going to play a lot. I also look at the human side of it. And if it's a kid that's a U.S. international, great talent, maybe it's better business for the Union to, put that money into your coffers and use that somewhere else to kind of bolster maybe what you have or what you need to get moving forward to get another trophy. So for Vazquez, I'm really happy, like you said, closer to home, got the assist. Of course, I did see that on that great ball. And maybe it's a different type of system for him that might work. Maybe he doesn't have as much responsibilities, maybe off the ball, than what he would do maybe for the Union. Maybe there's just different tactically about he sets up into the attack. I don't know how San Diego is going to deploy him moving forward when they get back to league action. But for him, he gets to play right away. He's in MLS. He's not in X-Pro. I've been told by several here, like a Kyle or Jillian who cover Union to a lot, that he's been playing really well down there. And the same with CJ Olney. I spoke to CJ outside the locker room in Chicago, I believe, when Eddie Davis got his MLS debut, if I'm correct on that, for like 1 minute. And, CJ, actually, I believe, born in the Chicago area and out here now and gets loaned, right? And I'm happy for him, too, because, again, there's an opportunity. There's a kid that can play multiple positions in the midfield, and now he's going to get a chance. So I think that those guys were hungry, and then seeing kind of break in last year after maybe the mistake last year in the Cincinnati game, and then got buried and never played again for Jim in MLS, and like a Sal who finally gets his shot. And now you see Eddie Davis cracking in a little bit. And then others, like you said, Jakupovic is coming. I've been told there's a lot of positives about him, which I'm really eager myself as just the play-by-play guy to learn more about from him, just a young kid. And then, you bring in the Cavan factor too about, hey, should Vazquez or Alney get more playing time than those? And I think what I tell people is that, with Cavan, everybody wants him to play, and he's a fabulous talent, but he's also just a young 15-year-old kid. And I think people need to pump the brakes and say, where were you at 15? And I know we didn't have the talent like he has now. He's on this little bit of a spell here with Man City. What was it, the under 21s where he scored against Buxton? Thanks to, I think it was Jose, it was you that posted or found that highlight, I think, or somehow you found it. It looked like from somebody's backyard, but I had to squint trying to find that goal. But that was awesome that you found that. And just to finish off, I'm happy for Vazquez, for Alney. Look, they get a chance. It probably wasn't going to be here immediately, and who knows? You have Quinn locked up. You have Vinny Vasilev still here moving forward after the. Where were they going to fit in? They weren't going to be target number 9 players for you. Were they going to be, the backup left back experiment? I think that was in the Pittsburgh game. We didn't call the early rounds of the Open radio. I think that was the game that I was watching. Then I took my Indy 11 game. So I think it was the Pittsburgh game where he played left back. And yeah, it's a piece of business, guys. It's professional sports. It happens. With CJ, does he have a shot still to be at the Union? Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm happy for the guys. And if Vazquez is permanently transferred to San Diego, I hope he does very well, because in my conversations with him and with CJ, they're two terrific young men. And I hope they make it. I really do.
Yeah, every time that they've spoke to the media, whether it be with the first team or with the second team, they've always been very open to the media. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a credit to the Union's PR staff. It's like, I can remember when the first couple groups of homegrown players were coming up, didn't have much to say to the media, but I can think about Andrew Rick. I mean, you would know this, Jose, from last year to this year, just how much better he is speaking to the media. David, I feel like, is talking every week, or was talking every week with the media, which is mostly Kyle and Jillian Almany for Union too. His interviews have got better too. And so Malik, I'm sure, he keeps up his run. He'll be a season pro next year talking to the media. But real quick, a couple comments people wanted to talk about is Todd Baribo getting his green card. That opened up a international slot for the Union, which they immediately traded away to Austin FC for $50,000 in 2026 scam. I don't have too much to say on this. Somebody just said, can you please explain the Austin transaction? It's as simple as, in my opinion, the Union probably aren't going to make a splash this year for an international player. Why hold on to a spot where you can get some money for it? You apply it to your GAM total for 2026, where more than likely you're going to go ahead and make some more moves in the wintertime. So I think it's as simple as that. Nothing else to really add on that. But yeah, nice to see Todd Baribo finally get his green card. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, Baribo is going to get sold because of reports saying that the New York area teams are interested. I think I saw reports that Fluminense is apparently interested in Brazil. I saw Rafa Navarro is being linked to Fluminense in Brazil. So I don't know. I don't buy too much into these reports. I think the Union really believe that they have a shot at it. And so why not hold on to these players unless you get an offer that's too good to turn down and actually go for multiple trophies this season. But a game that did happen last weekend, Philadelphia Union versus Eintracht Frankfurt. Dave Leno, Sebastian Letou on the call for this friendly. And Jose, you were so happy because we finally got a friendly game live stream, and Dave Leno gets to call another soccer game. And this was a huge game for you to call, Dave. I mean, you have a World Cup winner, the player who scored the game-winning goal in the 2014 World Cup in Mario Götze, and seeing a historic team like Frankfurt come back to Subaru Park once again. And the media, the fans got entertained to a 2-2 draw. Chris Donovan scores a game-tying goal where the goalkeeper comes out high line. The Union beat that. You talked about the pass by Eddie Davis. Chris scores in the 73rd minute. Andre Blake, a lot of great saves in the first half. And this team, they go down early, but like they've done so much this season, they score a goal off of a set piece with Bruno Damiani. Kai Wagner so deadly off those set pieces. I want to know, Dave, number one, your thoughts calling this game and just how the Union, in your opinion, it seemed like they fared against a really strong Frankfurt team. And let's not forget Paxton Aronson coming back to Subaru Park too for his homecoming game.
So I would say it's a much needed game for the team, given that all these other clubs are battling Leagues Cup and just to stay fresh. That's number one. Number two, in my conversations with the staff leading up into the game, the approach was, hey, we're going after this. We're not just, going to play one touch two and, just try to make this, just a little bit of a passing sequence type of affair. No, we're going to try to implement the tactics of like we do for an MLS game into this one and show Frankfurt what we're all about. Frankfurt gearing up their first Bundesliga match, I believe, on August 23rd against Werder Bremen. I believe, talking with their staff in the press area, I believe they have a matchup on Saturday in London against Fulham, and maybe their last preseason tune-up before the Bundesliga start. Of course, we were going up against a Champions League squad, which was fabulous, albeit several of the number ones, including the goalkeeper, Kevin Trapp, did not start in the game. I think that was talking to the staff before the game for Frankfurt. That was just a rest thing. What I saw in the game, first off, let me just say, personally, I was so happy, removing myself, I was so happy for the fans that there was a stream for this, that there was a broadcast for this. And I can tell you just a little inside baseball, or I call it inside soccer, the Union were trying to push to do, some preseason broadcasts, for the team in Clearwater this year. And it just didn't work out at the last minute. But maybe in the future, I can tell you internally that it's in the works. They're going to try to do that. And I hope they will, whether there's commentators or not. I think it's all good, and we should be transparent and getting, it's 2025. Next year will be 26, and I think everybody wants to see the product. And I don't think there's no harm in seeing the teams battle it out. Nobody's stealing, scouts and all that. It's the preseason.
Dave, I chuckle a little bit. I chuckle a little bit because you don't know. I can't imagine you know this. Todd knows this because I was working with him through time zones and the madness. I was out in Seattle giving money to a virtual private network to be able to watch the first friendly against was it Slavia Praha out in Spain at 3 hours behind all of you in the middle of the morning. I think it was 5 a.m. my time, just trying to figure out how the hell to watch this game. And then fast forward, Dave, I gave AGF whatever it was for that month worth of I think I gave him $9 and Todd was able to benefit from it. Again, working completely against the grain to try to get to watch this club because I'm so invested, right? It's obviously a new cycle, getting to see the new guys. I think we got to see Glavinovic for a little bit. Westfield, I think, was injured. Nate was injured, whatever. I'm just so glad to hear this because I think this is genuinely something, and I get that there are hurdles and mountains probably to go up against to get some of this stuff done. But the reality is that if the Union heard, hey, how many people gave AGF $8 for that month, right? What if the Union were to internalize some of that operation, right? To keep you employed, give you something to do, Dave, right? A job
right.
for 1 or 2 games, 3 games, whatever it is in Marbella, Spain. It's just so pleasant to hear because often I think the immediate knee-jerk reaction, me included, is what a bummer, right? So many people want to be more invested in this. in this city where the Philadelphia Union, depending on the day and time of year, maybe fall third in line or fourth in line in the sports podium. It's so great to hear that the Union are thinking about how to keep this cycle going and the attention.
And I think they will try. I really do. And that's just coming from the broadcaster. What the front office decides, it's up to them. But I think, in my opinion, for the league, it's not just the Union. I'm thinking as a whole, just like, I watched, spring training baseball, preseason NBA games. I think it's a good thing only promoting the product. And stuff, for TV might be another discussion, but I think people are just happy to see a stream. So that's number one. Number two, going back into the game. So you're playing a Champions League bound squad they're getting back in that competition since winning Europa League 2022. So they were in the Champions League. I believe they got bounced out in the round of 16 to Napoli. I saw somewhere in the comments, Marmoush's gone, Ekateki out as well. So they lost a couple of their strikers. Then they get a guy from Mainz who scored against us around the 3rd minute, Johnny Burkhardt. Jonathan, but he goes by Johnny, the staff told me. He scores around the 3rd minute. That was a tough one, I think, to give up early in the game. And the Union weren't pressing at the right off of goal kicks or towards like the top of the penalty area. They were more sitting at the top of the circle. It was kind of the defensive alignment I saw from the team. And then kind of when the first pass went towards the midway line, they kind of went through their pressing cues, right? And they went at it. And then obviously that press got higher up the field as the game turned on. What I saw in the scout for Frankfurt coming into the matchup, and I think how they played, they were operating a lot on the right-hand side with Rasmus Christensen. He was kind of getting on that Wagner side and kind of isolated Kai from getting advanced. And maybe in the matchup tactically, Bradley and the staff didn't want Kai to get forward as much early on. He did later, obviously, on the beautiful service to Yanni to get one back, which was awesome to see. And Kai's been killing it with that iron left foot. And good to see Damiani get his head scoring for the first time, I believe, since the Red Bull game in league play. We need to get Bruno we all know about the expected goals and all that. So we need to get him going. And then going back to what I saw tactically in the game, and I kind of said this on air, is they kind of operated from like the outside backs and then through their number 6s, kind of I believe his name is pronounced Faris Shaibi, who wore number 8 in the game. He was fantastic and maybe more like an 8 box to box than a 6. And I think even looked further up like a 10 in the game, just the way that he was operating. I thought he was fantastic with the services and runs, and I felt like they kind of looked for him and Hugo Larsson in the middle, then went back to the outside. If you can kind of like zigzag on your soccer field as you're drawing and diagramming it, that's kind of how they built. And then they got the width from Bohoya, number 19 for them, Jean-Mathieu Bohoya of France. He clocked 37 kilometers, which was the fastest I was told by people in the Bundesliga. I think that's 23 miles per hour in a game last year. He brought a lot of pace. I mentioned the number 9 did well. Someone mentioned Wahi, who scored a terrific goal for them, and I agree, from Jazz Fusion. I agree. And then it kind of ends where the Union I mentioned, higher press, got more of the chances, I would say, in the first half. If I'm Frankfurt going to the locker room, even though we were trailing, I'm like, well, Quinn Sullivan, multiple opportunities to score in the game. I think Damiani had a few. I know he scored as well. And I think there were a few others that you can add in there too, which were fantastic. We had chances, one, I believe, off the crossbar, off the post. So defensively, they had the backup keeper in, or a backup keeper, because their number 2, I think, a Brazilian, Calva Santos, was hurt. So Jens Graul, my German was tested in this, but I really studied hard. Speaking with some German friends and talking to Frankfurt staff, which were very helpful. By the way, a gem of the staff. They were so nice. So I would say the goal, leads to the Bedoya flick to Eddie Davis, leads on Donovan. And I was so happy for Chris to just see him bury it, and really pleased to see the ball that Eddie Davis provided to Chris. And for Chris to get that goal was just awesome. We need that type of finishing, whether it's Donovan, whether it's someone else moving forward, because that's the difference to me of the Union and some other clubs that you guys have talked about, the LAFCs, the Cincinnatis, and we can go on and on and on. How Sam Surridge for Nashville. obviously, needless to say, Messi for Miami, they get that quick, numerical advantage going to the box. They're going to try to kill off the game, and likely 9 times out of 10 they will. Will the Union? Well, I think the Union bringing in Iloski, they want to be sharper in the final third moving forward. And I think it's there, evident by the season that Ty Baribo's having with his 15 goals. So I think inclusion, I thought it was a fantastic game for the fans, by the way. I thought it was a great crowd. I'm told by a lot of friends in the Sons of Ben, and also just looking out and talking with people, seeing things on social media. I thought both fan bases had fun with each other. I saw a Frankfurt fan waving the Sons of Ben flag in the river end, which is awesome. And, for a bigger club to come back to Chester and play a friendly, and for what it meant also, guys, lastly, think of all the German connections, right? Bradley's played a long time in Germany, right? Ernst Tanner, we know all his connections in Germany. How about Oliver Zemla getting in? I think that was so great. The kid works hard in training all the time. He gets in after Andrew Rick. I thought that was a real feather in the cap to the staff, in my point of view, bringing Oliver in, a kid from Germany. And lastly, Kai Wagner, and you mentioned his all connections with, Todd mentioned Schweinsteiger in the past, Mueller as well, with the Vancouver, and now all his Bayern connections in the German national team, and what that meant probably for Kai too in the game, and to get an assist. So really pleased with the effort the Union had. Yeah, of course, there's a couple breakdowns here and there that happen, but all in all, I thought both teams, for Frankfurt, doing the tour of Philly, coming from Louisville, Kentucky, also played Aston Villa before that in late July. I thought it was a great display, and really happy that the fans got to see it at home. I agree with Valerie. For Zemla to get in, that shows you that everybody's on board. This is, they're not just, of course, things are planned. I'm just happy a bunch of people got into the game as well. You saw certain guys from suspension, right? Frankie played a little bit more. I think he was the last guy from the starting 11 to play. Nate Harrell, because they were both coming off the suspension from the Colorado game. So there was a game plan how to play guys 45 minutes, maybe 65 minutes, give guys 30 minutes, and then obviously the Zemla pull in for Rick. So I thought it was great. Jose, what did you think of the game?
I watched the best that I could from Dallas, the airport, as my flight was delayed. Funny enough, Dave, they had scheduled my connection from Denver to Philly with a stop in DC, and United forgot to, they scheduled a steward, they scheduled a co-pilot, they didn't schedule a main pilot. So I had to wait for someone to arrive from Dallas, Texas to be able to fly our plane. So I got to watch the first 60 minutes before this person finally arrived, and not much else to add, honestly, from what you had. I think it was great to see a lot of this rotation. It was great to hear and read about Zemla getting in some time. Obviously, I don't think that there's a match replay to watch. I think they do it with like a YouTube hidden link.
It's a league
that
rule thing. It was
and that's
only
okay.
live at the time.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. It sounds like whatever the revenue split, it was worth it, right? In terms of getting this club here, getting that team here, and what a tour Frankfurt put together with Louisville and obviously the playing Aston Villa. And for those that weren't aware, there was such a good deal out there in between the Louisville game and the Frankfurt game as well. I think Oviedo was out there from Spain also. There was like a 3-way like little round robin type of thing. Everybody gets to play each other once. I think you got 3 games for like $35 or something like that. It was an unbelievable deal, as well as like some scarves or something like that. It was incredible. So glad to see that this happened. Glad to see that the fans got to watch, and just honestly, even more, just glad that these guys got to play against some, as Jim would say, and Todd, you remember this, Dave, this probably rings in your head, but like some real players, right? Like Jim would say, like these are some real players when you think about the caliber of these guys. And, they got to see it in preseason with Slavia Praha, and maybe not so much as AGF, a different caliber there, but to play against Champions League contention teams and in the later rounds, qualifying or group, etc. It's always good to measure, but also don't lose track that this is also a marketing beat for some of these players, right? That they get under their legs that they played against Frankfurt, that they did okay against players like the Aaronsons of the world. And every other person you mentioned, Dave, with your generous and wonderful pronunciation of German, they got to play against them, and whether they fared well or not so great, it's just a great beat for them to build their resume. So I'm just glad that the guys got that opportunity to continue to build that CV.
So before we wrap up the show, as I named the episode, I got some people. I saw somebody was a little bit upset, Jose, on Twitter. They said, does it matter that the Union are going on a supporter shield run? Like, does that matter to people? And I would say it does matter. And so, as you guys saw, the episode title says, "Can the Union keep their supporter shield run up?" And this has been an incredible season for the Union. We're going to skip the Toronto preview just because of for time constraints and everything. So I do apologize if people were looking for our thoughts on Toronto. But yeah,
There's
I mentioned
no
it.
115 minutes of total time or some added
Oh,
time
people-
here at the end.
People expect that from Jose and I. We always tell people we're going to keep it within an hour, and it always goes over. I mean, the listeners expect that, and
I have MLS duty, Dave. I got to work.
Can I just mention one thing at the just to bookend the Frankfurt thing? I know you got to wrap up the show. Great to see, one thing I missed. Great to see Paxton back. I think he played 37 games for the Union, 4 goals. I think he still holds one Union record for the youngest to complete a game at 17 years. I'm not looking at this, but I think it's like 347 days. This on one of my boards in Chicken Scratch in the 21 season. So, we had him 21 to 22 and see the maturation of him physically. And I think there was, when he came, I was hoping he would start. Obviously Jose played him, rightfully so. The marketing thing, right, with Paxton coming in, which is great for our fan base to see him and Brendan flourish, both for their club and for our country. Fantastic for them and the family. And I think he had 2 chances, one on the dribble in the game. So I was happy to see him out there. I think somebody put in LaFleur, came in off the bench too. Fantastic as well for Isaiah and Pierre too, to get some time. Jillian spot on and great. I agree. And last thing I want to say to folks as you're going to close out the show, the Union, and I talk a lot with the staff, talk to several players, both home and on the road, and I'll tell you, they're going to treat every game. They're not looking past any opponent. They're going to treat every game very, very seriously. And I think the Toronto team is one. It's like Toronto and Montreal, man. They always give us a tough game. And I don't care that they're 14 points out of a playoff spot on Saturday. Brent Holtzen, their forward, hasn't played in the last couple of games. The contracts were terminated. I think a lot of people know, I believe July 1 with Insigne and Bernadeschi. There's guys that are fighting for that team, and they still have Sean Johnson in between the sticks for them. It is not going to be an easy game. I know they might have some woes defensively with that unit, whether they play with a back 3 or a back 4. It remains to be seen. But they have some pretty good attackers on that team as I continue to watch them since the last time we played them. And Kyle said it in the chat and Wagner scored a screamer deflected off of Matty Longstaff in the 92nd minute. We were down 1-0 up there virtually the whole game. It rained there. It was really cold. Hopefully we have great weather like we had the other night against Frankfurt at home. Hopefully we have a great crowd. What I want to see is now, as we have 4 league home games left, I believe 5 on the road, and obviously factor in also the Open Cup game next Wednesday against Red Bull in the makeup game for the quarterfinal. I just want to see those crowds come to life, like in 22, guys, and even at tail end of 21 when things kind of came back a little bit to normal, I guess, and I guess at some points in 23 too. I just want to see that crowd just continue to back these guys because there's a trophy up for grabs, and I don't know which competition it's going to be: Open Cup, Supporter Shield, a run of the MLS Cup, and you can say Dave's got his Union hat on. But I think one of them is there for the taking for this team. I think they've just been too good this year, and maybe more than one. And I think you got to win your home games, be very disciplined, could steal some points on the road, and they're going to be in a great position to host a home playoff game. So, someone writing we have 5 home games left actually. So whatever it is, 5 and 4, 4 and 5, and then obviously the Open Cup games. I'm hopeful. that this team just takes care of business at home and just be very disciplined from start to finish defensively. I think the goals will come. How do we react defensively with the recovery sprints, with the high line of confrontation that I love seeing the Union do with Glezis and Makanya. And Makanya is playing great, getting all this time this year next to Jacob, an all-star year for him. So I'm thinking really positive. I think a lot of people, I know everybody's still down about last year. Nobody wants to see what happened in 2020. I called the playoff game where we win the Supporters' Shield in that COVID year, and we get bounced at after the bye to New England, and we played them 6 times, and that was kind of a fluke, right? And they beat us 2-0. Still Bye and DeJuan Jones haunt me there. I don't see that happening this go around. It might be easy to say now, rubbing the crystal ball, but can't overlook Toronto, just like they couldn't overlook Montreal, and we know that game didn't start well several games back. So I hope they get it done. Toronto continue to make a run, because the next week, the back-to-back against Red Bull is. I know we are on this massive unbeaten streak against them. It's not going to be easy too. So hopefully they continue to get it done. Can't wait to document it all too.
That's a fair point, Dave. Like I was going to mention, I mentioned it in the intro, and this is where we'll wrap up the show, just talking about all this, and I'll ask you guys 2 questions, but I know you have MLS to get to, Jose, to watch, and hopefully MLS didn't give you too many games to write about for tonight's slate of games. 3, he put points up for people who are listening to this.
Busy man over there. Get that coffee, Jose. That coffee on.
Yeah. And he's got a flight tomorrow to go to Ireland. So, I mean, MLS is keeping him quite busy. But 2025, I said this in the intro, Union first team to reach 50 points in MLS, 15-5 record. The Union 9-1-3 at Subaru Park, complete turnaround from what the season was last year, where they only had 4 wins at home, 6-4-2 away record. 11-game unbeaten run at one point this season. They've had the longest losing streak be 2 games this season against Columbus and Nashville, when Nathan Harriel and Quinn Sullivan were missing for them because they were with the United States men's national team at the Gold Cup. 43 goals, which is tied for the 6th most in MLS. 24 goals against, which is the fewest in MLS. 16 set-piece goals, guys. And Jose and I talk about this so many times. We talk about this in the press box. I'm sure you talk about it on your broadcast, Dave, but the Union, 37% of the goals have been scored off of set pieces. That's an unbelievable number there. And I think it's either 3 or 4 games now in a row that the Union have scored a set piece. Will it continue on Saturday against Toronto? We shall see. But they're always a threat on set pieces, whether it be free kicks or whether it be on corner kicks. And we just continue to see the Union capitalize all these different movements off of corner kicks that Frank Leich's done such a great job designing for this team. There's multiple weapons on set pieces for the Union. This was surprising for me when I looked it up. Only 3 penalties awarded this season to the Union, which is one of the fewest amount in all of MLS. They converted 2 of those penalty chances, Quinn Sullivan being the lone one to have his penalty saved against Nashville, which seems like it was forever ago. But I say all that to say, like, this is a pretty special team, and I think people in the comment section would agree. You guys would agree. And in my opinion, it really does give off 2022 vibes. And maybe some people are still traumatized by that because of what happened in MLS Cup against LAFC, and that team battled back. But this is a team where it's either 21 and 22 points that they've gained from losing or tying positions, which is second most in MLS. I'll look at it. I'm sure Kyle will correct me in the comment section, but this is a team, even when they're down, they're still fighting back. They're still believing. And that's exactly what we saw in 2022. And just to see 17 different goal scorers where, yes, Baribo leads the team with 15, but they find different ways to beat you and to get back into games. And yes, it was harsh to watch the Union blow leads against Inter Miami, against Columbus Crew. But then we remember that LA Galaxy game. We remember just the fight, the belief, the grit that this team has. And a lot of that reminds me of how special that 2022 team was. I'm sure you probably agree with that too, Dave.
100%. And the run that the 2022 team made, what was it? They won 5 or 6 games at the tail end of the year, all that momentum into the playoffs on that Herculean run, right? To It's MLS Cup. And also, in that year, you had Gazdag, Carranza, and Ua all with record totals, right? What did we set a record for? Was it 72 goals scored, something like that? All the points that we had generated as well, all the road wins, how dominant we were at home. And that was a recipe for getting to our league championship. And that can happen again this year. This team is different. And I feel like in the losses that we had recently, or semi-recently, I should say, on the road trip after the Chicago 1-0 win, right? Damiani scores on a penalty, I recollect, in the 10th minute, right? Then we lose to Columbus and Nashville. It was like one lapse, maybe two lapses defensively in the game that cost us. That was it. It's not like we got manhandled. And that's what I tell people. You can say, well, Columbus and Nashville might have more playmaking, more creativity than the Union do in transition. And that's an argument to be had. And I think there's counter arguments from the Union side as well. And I would say, if we can be stout in the back, Blake's going to be there and do very well. Rick's done fantastic when he's come in too, by the way, I believe with his 4 clean sheets. And I think Blake has 5. I think we were the better team against Miami both games this year. And I'm saying that very objectively. I know it didn't go our ways. The messy scores off the free kick, Segovia, 95th minute. That was a tough one. Those losses were gut-wrenching. And then you'd say, yeah, it's hindsight now that we could have a healthier lead in the race in the East and in the Shield. And things are going to happen. And then we storm back, and like we said earlier tonight, and we pulled out points. I'm curious just to end this, because I know Jose's got to cover, and since I don't know if I'll be back on this year, but I'm curious from you guys. You've covered the team for a long time, and you see Miami with the games in hand. All the injuries that they have, who will play, who won't, their defensive problems, and these other teams. Where do you guys see the Union finishing as we go into decision day, and how maybe that Charlotte game will play out? And where do you think we will be heading into the playoffs? I've asked this to a lot of fans, and I get a myriad of answers. And I'm curious from your media hats, and covering the team and knowing all the data, knowing the players and your sources that you guys have, talking to the group, where you think they'll be going into the playoffs.
I think the biggest wrinkle in it all is the Open Cup, and the fact that they can control what they can control, both in Open Cup, but as well in league play. In league play, there are far more variables than there are in the Open Cup. In the Open Cup, they're just facing whoever's in front of them, and that's who they need to climb over and over up until the pinnacle. In Leagues Cup, unfortunately, you're bound by, currently, you got to keep winning and scoring and whatever, but there are so many other things happening, right, between Miami having to make up games, and what type of run is Cincinnati going to get in, because I think they're honestly the biggest threat that the Union have this year for the Shield. I think San Diego will cool off, if not already has cooled off, especially with losses of some players and maybe some new players coming in, with Corey Baird just announced today, I believe, from Cincinnati, making the move over. So there's going to be some adjustment there for someone who never really got started in Cincinnati, it felt like. It's to me, it's more of a what competition can they control more? And for me, it's the U.S. Open Cup, and I think that's where maybe the attention will be drawn. But knowing Bradley and knowing what I know about Bradley, and knowing the way that he's managed his team this year, I have no reason to question whatever decision he makes. Everything he's done this year has turned into gold. So if it's splitting up the team in such a way, or just restricting minutes from players for certain games, where Todd, you and I have scratched our heads thinking, like, I feel like I look like Columbo sometimes, just just scratching my head, like what type of decision is this? But you can't question it because of the results and where they are in the league. So it's a really tough question. But I think I'm thrilled again if the Union win the U.S. Open Cup, but I think the situation has shifted a little bit with how well they've gone into this last stretch, and not having to get on a plane realistically for a little while now with some of the games that they have to go through. It's such a fortunate thing, and if they fall into third or fourth place, I think that's okay. Anything beyond that and not having a home game, it's an absolute failure of this last 9-game stretch, and easier said than done for us just sitting in comfortable leather chairs, talking into a microphone versus, the roster going and playing 90 minutes, practicing every day, heat, cold, etc. That I really do think that anything below fourth place is sort of a disappointment. And I'm not one that holds the supporter shield very highly. Unfortunately, it's not the thing that puts a star on your crest. It's not the trophy that the Union have been so close and at the pinnacle to hoist over their head with the U.S. Open Cup. And listen to the first 10 minutes of the U.S. soccer podcast today with Alejandro Bedoya and just how fired up he is about that U.S. Open Cup matchup coming up. And it'll put a fire in your belly. And if that's happening to him, someone who has had his minutes severely reduced over the years, but holding this team together, I can only imagine how it feels for other players who are, daily regulars on that squad. So that's where I stand on it. I wish them the best and trying to be as neutral as possible, but I really do think that they have an opportunity to have another special year. And though this team is unrecognizable from that 2022 year, when you think about the bodies involved and how many have come, how many have gone, and how few have actually stayed, it's nice that this group, it's maybe on the way of etching itself into a very historic run.
Yeah, I agree. And for people that are just listening on the RSS feed, the remaining 9 games are this weekend against Toronto, who are in 12th place in the Eastern Conference, 5-13-6 record, 21 points. Then the Union go to New York Red Bulls on August 16th, 9-10-6 record, 33 points. August 23rd, Chicago Fire, 10-9-5 record, 35 points. Then they go away to Cincinnati, which I think is the big game, Dave. In second place in the Eastern Conference, 49 points, 15-6-4 record. We remember at the beginning of the season, the Union come off with a big 4-1 victory over them. Yes, Cincinnati had to focus on the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Remember what that was like for the Union, or I should say the Champions League, right? Or Champions Cup. I don't know. They changed the name. CCL, I think it is now. I don't know. But you guys know what I mean. But
Yeah,
we see this with MLS teams where they are constantly just changing their teams during MLS games and then focusing on CONCACAF Champions Cup. And yeah, the Union, maybe to a lot of people, a surprise 4-1 victory. The Union looked good against Cincinnati. Unfortunate, the Union couldn't keep a clean sheet in that game. So they go to Cincinnati on August 13th. And then a couple weeks off, they go out to Vancouver, who are in second place in the West, 13-5-6 record, 45 points. New England, September 20th, 6-11-7 with 25 points. And then the Union will finish off with DC United on September 27th, 14-7 record, 19 points, 14th in the East. October 4th, last home game for the Union against New York City, 11-8-5, 38 points, 8th place. And then, like you had mentioned earlier in the show, Dave, away at Charlotte, 12-11-2, 38.7 place. And so, as things stand on August 6th, the Union's remaining 9 games, only 3 of those teams are out of a playoff spot. Everybody else is in the playoffs. And I know, what is it? 62% of the league, 63% of the league makes the playoffs. But yeah, it's a favorable schedule, as somebody had said earlier in the show. But that Cincinnati game scares me. I think that's going to be a playoff like atmosphere. I agree with José. Anything below 4th seems like a disappointment with this team because they've been in the top 4 all season long. And I don't know. Miami, they have a lot of games in hand. I believe it's 3 games in hand. Yeah. And the Union, unfortunately, are done playing Miami, and so they really can't have a say in what Miami does or doesn't do. Columbus, the Union, are done playing as well, and I think this is the Columbus team when playoffs come. Yeah, they're a team that's always in it in the playoffs. They just really start to lock in under Wilfried Nancy, and so top 4, I think, is very doable for the Union. Will they finish in first place? Will they win the Supporter Shield? I'm not quite sure, but I think it's got to be top 4. It's got to be top 4 for this team. Get a couple playoff games. And even if the Union have to go on the road in the playoffs, I'm not afraid because of how well they've done on the road this season. And that's been the case. It feels like the last couple seasons where for whatever reason, it seems like they know how to get results on the road. And so the Union, I think, continued to use that as their advantage this season. They don't care if they play away. They don't care if they play at home. They had to correct their home form. They've done that. Subaru Park, you mentioned it, Dave, you want to see Subaru Park as we get towards the tail end of the season really fill up and just pack Subaru Park, make it loud, make it a fortress like we've seen in the past. So I do think top 4 is very doable for this team, and I would be shocked if they fall out of that. Last question I'll ask you guys before we wrap up. I asked this a couple episodes ago, but as things stand, 9 games remaining, who would you say is your Union MVP? I'll go to you, Dave.
It's got to be either Kai Wagner for me, left back, or just Ty Baribo with the goal scoring that he's put. So I would say one of those two. Kai's so instrumental, as we all know, and for him, first off, not being to that first all-star team. Like, come on, that's a joke. I know they gave it to Alba and Arfsted, and Arfsted's having a great year. Alba, I know the name, I know the player, but Kai's having a fantastic season, and anybody that knows anything about the Union knows how much Kai means to the team. And you mentioned all the data with the set pieces, and then just Ty's scoring rate this year. I believe, what is it, second in the league right now, with the 15 goals. And Jazz is right; he has missed some time as well to that. And there's other guys that I would say are like MVPs and kind of the soul and breathe the ethos and the ethos of the badge that has led to our success this year. But I would say Kai and Ty as if they can share it.
The Kai Ty connection, Jose.
Is that another marketing beat for Union Yards, Dave? Is that what we're doing here? Okay,
my
I see.
Kai Ty, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Just don't sell them for $20 out there. Come on now.
We can go in a 30-minute podcast about affordability in the Philadelphia Union when it comes to a lot of things. But for me, in terms of the MVP, Todd, I think this is such an interesting question at this time of the year. And I think what really makes it difficult to predict, or maybe even guess, is that just how long the playoffs are. In this current format, obviously Don Garber has already talked about potentially a new playoff format coming up in the next couple of years, which is sort of crazy when you think about all the different ones that they've gone through and run through and exploited and ruined. I think I agree with Dave. Kai has been, the games that he has not played, it is quite apparent that the team is very different and not in a great way. Just maybe that's not fair to say, just very different. It seems less inspired when it comes to chance creation. That left foot's magical. We heard Frank in the podcast, which, Dave, if you can get this back to the people at B, the powers at B, what an incredible job that media team has done in highlighting some of these behind the scenes figures between Marissa Gabb and the boot room with the folks in the equipment room, as well as some other faces across the team. It has been awesome. So Frank being one of them, he spoke very highly of Kai. So I would say Kai. And I think I have to go. It's a toss-up for me personally, maybe because I enjoy the position more than most, and it's not one that gets a lot of attention. It's not as appreciated as the striker and Ty, but it has to be between, if I could pair them up into one, it would be the Jovan Danley pairing. Yeah. That it is such an impressive and dynamic pairing that I genuinely believe that it's the best pairing in MLS when it comes to the role that they take in terms of that defensive, but also that understanding, unspoken apparently, because Danley's still not great at English, the way that they can communicate and move and balance and pivot, etc. That it's fantastic. Though I have a sneaky feeling that somehow Bruno Damiani might sneak into this conversation based on the playoffs, because I think he's a guy that once he gets hot, based on all the other metrics outside of scoring, if he had 6-7 more goals, I think that we're having a different conversation altogether about who he is and what he brings to this team, because he's doing it all except scoring, getting in the right positions, being aggressive, doing the defensive work, just the all around incredible players, just that last finishing touch that's missing, as well as goalkeepers having their best nights of their lives. Dave, think about Toronto FC with Johnson saving his scissors kick, right? Upper 90 scissor kick that gets saved. And we would have been talking about that for the next 3 weeks, or the following 3 weeks after that goal. I think I was in Sea Isle during that game. So Yeah, I think Damiani's going to have a special postseason, and that's what it's all about. These guys taking turns, getting hot. If it's in the playoffs and 2 go off, fantastic. If it's in the middle of the season and 2 go off and Bruno's the one who sacrifices his scoring, great. Just get silverware, and I think that's what matters for this team.
All right, so for me, it's between Kai Wagner and Quinn Sullivan. Yes, Kai's had a fantastic season, but I go back to that Columbus game and that Nashville game where chance creation was lacking. And we know that Kai's always going to create chances, but when it was just Kai, this team really struggled to create chances. 7 assists. I'm not counting the MLS secondary assists for Quinn Sullivan. 2 goals this season. He's second on the team in big chances created, 10, only 1 below Kai. 37 chances created, which is second on the team. And so Quinn Sullivan, he's not afraid to take players on 1v1. He's not afraid to, try these long-range shots. And I think, the more that Quinn tries these long-range shots, you mentioned a Bruno Damiani, Jose, it seems like he's always in the right position. What if he starts putting in those rebound shots? And maybe Bruno comes into this conversation if he gets on a heater. And so for me, because of how lacking this team was during the summertime when Quinn Sullivan and Nathan Harriel were away on that international duty, I think I got to give it to Quinn Sullivan, a slight edge over Kai Wagner. But Todd Baribo, 15 goals, you can't dispute that. Danley and Jovan Lukic, been fantastic. Jovan has to be up there with player of the season, new player of the season, I would say. But as you mentioned, Jose, because he plays a position that's not highly sought after, and how many times were we sitting here talking about Jose Martinez is the best number 6 in MLS, and he's not getting the credit that he deserves. And so, unfortunately, Jovan's not going to get the credit he deserves. And when you have a number 6 that can score like both Danley and Jovan Lukic, that's a big factor why the Union have been in first place for majority of the season. And I think that's going to help them continue to go on a playoff run. So for me, I would say Quinn Sullivan followed by Kai Wagner, but there is so many players that stick out on this team. And I do think because Bradley Cornell keeps things fresh, keeps players motivated by not having a set lineup, I think we're going to continue to see these guys push each other as hard as they can. They're going to continue to step up for one another when somebody's having an off game. And why not let that continue? And we'll see what happens the rest of the season. But Dave, Jose, it's been a blast. It's been a pleasure to have both of you guys on the show. I'll go to you, Dave. People who aren't following you on social media, where can they follow you, and anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you both for having me. Been a big fan of you both. You guys know that personally and professionally, and I love watching this, whether live or on replay at night. The last thing I'll say on your comments there is both of you mentioned several names, and I think that shows you kind of in summation what we talked about tonight. Is that it's not just 1 or 2 guys that are the stars of this team, right? That are making $10 million player, $10 or $15 million. We don't have those type of players with the Union. Everybody's bought in regardless of how much money they're making. And it's like I said, it's a collective effort with this group. And the fact that we mentioned there, you could have MVPs from multiple areas. Blake hasn't been available. Rick's done well. How about the comeback year Kalestis is having? Maybe that's not talked about enough. How about Nate Harriel playing all 4 spots on the back line, even as a number 10 several times this year? The maturation, the quick maturation, I should have, of Watu Makanya couldn't sniff playing time for the first team last year. Them finding Jovan Lukic from Serbia, and what he's doing, and Danley coming from what we saw glimpses of last year, how he's flourishing this year, working up the field. Bradley gets his guy Indy from St. Louis, and what Indy's not the goal scoring guy that maybe a Danny Gazdag is, but the last game that I saw from Indy, and the amount of running and the amount of work rate that I saw from him in the attacking half, I was very, very impressed with Indy last game. And I said that to the coaching staff. I really felt that way. And I was happy for the last league game that he had. And you mentioned what Quinn's providing, whether it's, with, assist-wise, shots. He had a couple of chances I mentioned against Frankfurt in the friendly. He's been awesome. And we've talked about the attacking threats at length. And now we have the depth. And that should lead to whether the end of the season will be battling, which what I hope selfishly is for the number 1 seed going to the playoffs, or 1-2, or for a top 4 seed. And I agree with you guys. I think the bare minimum, and this team knows it, you got to be a top 4 seed, get a home playoff game going into the postseason. As Jose rightly said, it's a long, long postseason that hopefully we are in. We know it's probably too long, but that's time for another conversation for another time. So I'm really excited for the final stretch. I'm so happy for the fans that we have this type of year, and I hope they can finish strong. And I know the guys are going after Open Cup, so we'll see if we keep continuing. If that semifinal game would be in Nashville, the finals I believe would be Austin or Minnesota on the other side, right, of the Open Cup. So we'd be traveling. And so I believe those matchups, not to get ahead, are like late September. And I think the final might be on October 4th. So, and then it leads to a busy stretch. I just want to thank you guys again for having me on tonight. Thank you for everybody commenting and supporting you guys, first and foremost, and all the kind words that you have with our broadcasts. You can follow me on things that I post on social, which is basically just promoting my next broadcast is at Dave Leno TV. But I do radio now for the Union, as there's no local TV. So our radio call will be this Saturday, 97.5 Fanatic. If you can't get the Fanatic in your car or wherever, you can hear it on your Alexa. The 97.5 The Fanatic app is completely free. That's how my parents listen. That's how. Oh, geez, my Alexa said, okay.
I was going to say,
Alexa.
David, you just set off so many machines through this podcast.
I know, right? I have a Nest looking at me, and I have a Alexa, which anyway. So yeah, you're right. I did do that. But also what I really appreciate too is Apple TV gives people, for those that do subscribe or get it with their season ticket package, they can hear us at home if they want to hear the local call. So I'm so happy for all the local radio announcers that if people want to watch the game but hear the local call, they can hear that. For those that don't make it to home games, they should have had that for the road. They don't. So very grateful that I can still be a part of Union coverage. I thank you guys for all the kind words you've had to say about my broadcasting. And I love putting in the time, the effort. And I hope we get to do this again. And I really appreciate everybody's love and support out there. And hopefully I see some faces on Saturday at the tailgate and get ready to call a W against TFC, baby.
Jose?
Couple of things to add. Something to remember for everybody: September 27th through October 20th. That's the U20 World Cup. So the United States is in it, which means that could be a Frankie Westfield inclusion. That could be a Andrew Rick inclusion should he get the call up. So just thinking about those bodies potentially missing a lengthy amount of time there going into the playoffs. With the Union specifically. But when it comes to this, excited to see how the season unfolds here. I'll be obviously disappearing for a little bit here, being in Dublin. I will figure out how to watch it. I don't know. Does Paramount Plus work in Europe? I didn't even think about that. Can I watch the US Open Cup game? I know I can watch MLS Season Pass without any issues internationally, so that should be fine. But excited again, Dave. It's such a pleasure. It's not even my show. I just come on, but it's great to chat with you for an extended length of time. I know we often see each other for 5-10 minutes in between or right before the games, and obviously have appreciated your work and appreciated the work of the Spanish side as well, and even the English side on the video broadcast. So I make sure that everybody gets a little bit of love by compiling those videos together and sharing them with people. So. Appreciate you, Todd, and I guess we'll talk, Todd, when I come back.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll keep it short, but you guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel live, every single podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod. You can also check out the goals breakdown video, which, I saw there was a lot of love for those this past week on the Philadelphia Union subreddit. So appreciate all the love there, that you guys continuing to subscribe to the podcast. Appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. And then check out my writing, the goals breakdown videos, or the podcast all in one place, thefreekick.substack.com. I know it's been a little bit since I wrote something, been really busy, but we give you guys a podcast, and a lot of you guys have loved this episode. I think it's because Dave's here. But look, you guys, the commenters, are what make the show what it is, and I appreciate all the support you guys have given us, just like Dave said, and continue showing up to support the Philadelphia Union. Continue showing up and supporting all of our work and everything. José's writing, José appearing on the show with AAT Sports with Mike Barrera, myself, Dave, with all his calls. I know you've been on multiple different Union podcasts, Dave, and so, just spreading the love around, trying to increase the knowledge of the beautiful game that we all love, and let's hope that the Union can stay hot, go on a big run in the US Open Cup, maybe come away with that trophy, and then focus on the playoffs, and who knows what happens in the playoffs. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.